Good evening and welcome to the DC Bar Foundation's fall reception. My name is David Ogden and I serve as the president of the foundation's board. Tonight we are really happy that you've joined us, and we're very happy to be joined by many representatives of the district civil legal aid community, DC Bar Foundation grantees, past Scout Prize recipients, judges, DC Council members, volunteers, donors, many others. Welcome to each and every one of you. Those of you who've attended our fall reception in the past know that we usually gather in person. I mean, that's something that can be said of pretty much all receptions in the past. Ours have been generously hosted by Alston and Bird in their lovely conference room. But this year is not normal for our reception or really any other, I think. But that won't keep us from gathering virtually to celebrate the work that we are doing together to make access to justice a reality for those who've been most deeply affected by the COVID pandemic. This reception has two primary purposes. First, to say thank you to our donors, to our volunteers, our board members, grantees, and all those who play crucial roles in the delivery of civil legal aid in the district. And second, to award the Scout Prize to a full-time legal aid attorney who has demonstrated a career-long, compassionate concern for his or her clients while exhibiting a high degree of skill representing them. This evening, we'll receive a welcome from DC Mayor Muriel Bowser and greetings from Councilmember Charles Allen, who has been instrumental in advocating for public funding for civil legal aid. Those of you who attended the President's reception a few weeks ago remember the greeting from Councilmember Allen. He's given us permission to share those remarks again, and I think if you didn't see them, you'll value the opportunity to do that. We're extraordinarily grateful for the support the district provides to the foundation each year to make access to justice possible for all residents. It's really essential and makes such a difference in this community. The foundation's CEO, Kira Jarrett, will then provide a program update focusing on our new strategic framework. We'll also hear from several of the foundation's grantees who have been working under extraordinary conditions to serve their clients, and you won't want to miss that. And of course, we'll be awarding the Scout Prize and hearing remarks from this year's recipient, Beth Mellon. Finally, we'll recognize several board members and members of our Young Lawyers Network Leadership Council who are completing their terms. I'm especially delighted that two of my board colleagues and friends, John Relman and Kelly Darnell, will be helping me to MC this evening's event, helping me and Kira really to MC it. John is the board secretary and also the chair of our grants committee, and Kelly serves as our treasurer and also chairs our finance committee. So again, welcome to all of you. Really glad you're joining us this evening. And now let's hear from the mayor, Mayor Bowser, and Councilmember Allen, followed by an update from Kira Jarrett, the DC Bar Foundation CEO. Mayor Bowser.
Good evening. I'm Mayor Muriel Bowser. We are grateful for the donors who helped make tonight's event possible and whose generous contributions will directly support the legal needs of district residents. We know that those needs are greater now, even more than ever, as our lowest income residents bear the brunt of this public health crisis. Affording them the legal representation and assistance they need is fundamental to upholding our DC values. On behalf of all Washingtonians, I want to thank the DC Bar Foundation for all of its important work, and I hope you'll join me in supporting them as they fulfill their mission of providing all DC residents with equal access to justice. Thank you.
Good evening. This is Ward 6 Council Member Charles Allen, as well as Chair of the Council's Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety. I want to thank the DC Bar Foundation for being a great partner in building a stronger and more robust civil legal network in the District of Columbia. This work gets at the core of so many of the challenges that our city faces and our society and all that we're wrestling with: a home, family, safety, financial stability. I suspect that everyone here already knows when it comes to civil legal proceedings, there's an enormous gulf in representation based solely on how much money you have to afford sound legal representation. Now, during my time as the chair of this committee, I've made it a budget priority to fund and expand the Access to Justice initiative, including this year when we were able to restore proposed cuts and expand funding to Access to Justice programs even further, including the district's historic right to representation in eviction proceedings. When we fought to get that bill passed, I remember there was a really shocking statistic. In any given eviction, 9 out of 10 times the landlord will have an attorney, while less than 1 in 10 cases, you'll find the same thing for a tenant. So setting aside the specifics of any case, we know that's what our justice system should look like. To me, this funding is seed money. It's an investment in a more just future. It represents just the beginning of the district's effort to balance the scales of justice and to right historic wrongs. You know as well as I do that too often the deck is stacked against our neighbors who don't have the time, the income, or the ability to mount a legal defense, to stave off eviction, to fight workplace issues, or to keep their family together. But you all do. The members of the DC Bar Foundation work pro bono. They represent district residents in these cases, and those who support the work, you are helping one person at a time to chip away at generations of inequality. It would be impossible to talk about the DC Bar Foundation and the civil legal aid removed from the cultural moment that we're living through right now as Americans, as we once again try to grapple with our history of racism and racial inequity. I know that it can feel daunting to think about these cases individually and the number of people who may not have been lucky enough to find their way into help. It can feel overwhelming, I know. I hope that it provides some hope that I'm with you. I'm committed to expanding our right to civil Gideon. As an elected leader, I know this is an area where we can make a big difference in getting closer to our ideals of a legal system that is truly centered on fairness and justice. And I hope as you look around this evening that you recognize there's a lot of good people putting in really long hours and making big sacrifices to ensure this work continues, working shoulder to shoulder with all of us. I want to thank you for your support for the DC Bar Foundation. I know we're all used to doing things a little different these days, but it's so important that you continue to support the Bar Foundation's work through this pandemic, because I think we're going to need it even more in the months to come, in the years to come than ever before. But I'll leave you with this thought. Whatever our recovery from this pandemic looks like, if there's any hope that we capitalize on this opportunity to come back to a more just and more fair community, it will depend on a legal system that recognizes the humanity of each of us and not only acknowledges, but tries to undo historic inequalities. You're all making this work possible. I'm grateful for it. I also stand with you as a friend in this work to get the job done. So thanks, everyone. And again, thank you so much to the DC Bar Foundation.
See if you can hear me. I'm Kira Jarrett. I'm going to start over. I'm the CEO of the DC Bar Foundation, and I want to say thank you for coming tonight and for being a part of this special event. Before I go any further, I do want to take a moment to say a very happy birthday to David Ogden, the foundation's president. He's not expecting this part of the program, but we wanted to wish him a happy birthday and thank him for his leadership in spending his birthday evening with us. I wish I could see your face right now, David. So I just did want to take a moment to give an update to everyone on what is happening with the foundation. And the biggest thing is that in September of 2019, we adopted a new strategic framework. And the goal of that new strategic framework is to transform the district's civil legal aid network so that everyone has a fair and equal legal experience. And we have 5 strategies that compose that framework. And so I just wanted to take a moment to share those with you if you've not already heard about them or read about them. And so the first one is that we want to make sure that we're engaging with all stakeholders. And that means that we want to engage not only with our sort of legal aid community, but those who are outside of our legal aid community that perhaps we don't normally partner with, because we know that it's going to take everyone's effort to make this work. The second strategy is that we want to identify the unmet legal needs within the district, within our civil legal needs community. And we really want to make sure that we're doing that in a way that we're hearing directly from people who need help, and that we're understanding where they're going for help, what would be most useful for them, and how we can pivot and adjust as we get their feedback. Our third strategy is that we want to fund with intention, and we want to make strategic investments in our community based on the engagement with all stakeholders, our identifying of the need, and then also what we learned from our investments. The fourth strategy is that we want to fund with intention, making sure that we are expanding and strengthening the legal aid network within the city. And then our fifth strategy is that we want to demonstrate impact. We want to show that the choices that we're making are actually making a difference. And so one thing that you'll notice from our strategic framework is this concept of a network. It's very important to us. And that's because we think that with the network engagement, we will bring all sides and all perspectives to the table. We'll have more collaboration, which at the end of the day will have greater and more impactful results within our community. And so that's just very important to us. And there are two ways in particular that we have been focused on that over the past several months. And one of those is through what we call FLAN, the Family Law Learning Network. There's another assistance network, and we're all working together. But the one that the foundation is funding is the Family Law Learning Network. And that's where we brought together our family law grantees to collaborate and to figure out where there can be system efficiencies and how they can work best together. And then the other one that you may have heard about as well is our Landlord-Tenant Legal Assistance Network. This is funded through the district's government's Civil Legal Counsel Projects Program. And one thing that we're just incredibly proud of the work of these grantees over the past, a couple of years maybe, has been the launch of a single phone line during COVID to help district residents who need help. So there's one place that you can go regardless of the grantee partner that you actually wind up with. There's one phone number that district residents can call for help. And so that's significant. And we think that that's something that would not have happened but for this focus on networks. And so the network approach and this commitment to transformation is a part of our 360-degree approach to our legal aid community. And so that includes providing grants. It includes loan repayment assistance program, where we help legal aid attorneys pay off their educational debt. It also includes training and evaluation. And that is all part of our 360-degree approach, the wraparound approach that we want to do or take to support our grantees. Next on our agenda is John Relman, who is the chair of our grants committee, secretary of our board, managing partner of Relman and Colfax, and a leading civil rights attorney. He is going to introduce a couple of our grantees to you so that you can hear directly from them about their experience and the importance of the work.
Neighborhood Legal Services Program is a recipient of funding from the Civil Legal Counsel Projects Program, also known as CLCPP, which has been administered by the Foundation since 2018. CLCPP comprises a network of legal aid providers focused on eviction defense in the district. Their work is made even more important as mass evictions loom because of the pandemic. DC Volunteer Lawyers Project is a member of the newly formed Family Law Learning Network, which is comprised of 6 foundation grantees. This network is intended to become a place where legal service providers working on family law issues can share ideas, inspiration, lessons learned, and promising practices, and strengthen evaluation efforts for the betterment of the larger civil legal system in DC. Each of these grantees will speak to us about the challenges of serving clients during the pandemic, the benefits of working in networks, and how support from the DC Bar Foundation makes a difference in their work.
Hello, my name is Karen Newton-Cole, and I am the Executive Director of Neighborhood Legal Services Program of the District of Columbia. I want to talk a little bit today about the DC Bar Foundation. The DC Bar Foundation has been a long-term supporter of Neighborhood Legal Services Program. They have supported many of our projects and programs, and they have allowed us to extend our services to a greater number of DC residents in need. The DC Bar Foundation has supported a program that is called the Civil Legal Counsel Projects Program, or better known as the Eviction Prevention Program. That particular program allows us to help DC residents and prevent eviction. Particularly with regard to neighborhood legal services, what we do is we give them extended representation in the court systems, and our whole goal is to prevent eviction. This particular program is also a collaborative program. It's a program that involves 5 other sister organizations. Those organizations come together along with Neighborhood Legal Services Program, and we sit down and we talk about strategies. How do we prevent eviction? How do we get the best our clients can possibly get from the system? We want to combat injustices that are embedded in the system. We want to combat inequities that are visited upon our clients based upon racial pieces. One of the things that we have done through COVID-19 is come together more closely as a group. And we've established a single point of contact, which has been the landlord and tenant land, or LNT land as we call it. That single point of contact allows people who are threatened or who need housing help to call the landline and get one of the legal services organizations. And if one legal services organization can't help them, another will help them. All of this has been possible through the DC Bar Foundation.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Tenen, and I am the Executive Director of the DC Volunteer Lawyers Project. At DC Volunteer Lawyers Project, we believe that a life free from violence and abuse is a basic human right. We are so grateful for the support from the DC Bar Foundation. With your support, we continue to provide critical legal services to domestic violence victims, at-risk children, and other vulnerable residents of the District of Columbia. In our domestic violence practice, where we help victims obtain protection orders and in family court, the need for our services has skyrocketed. Everything that we suspected would happen because of pandemic-related stay-at-home orders happened, and our caseload is 4 times what it was this time last year. Calls to our legal helpline are up 300%, and it seems that the end is nowhere in sight. Not only has the number of individuals in need of our services increased, but their respective needs are so much greater. The violence is more intense and more frequent. The numbers this summer and fall were like nothing we have ever seen before. There are additional complications for our clients because of court backlog and delays, along with the fact that because of COVID-19, most abusers are released post-arrest rather than incarcerated. Cases that would typically resolve in 2 weeks remain unresolved months into the process. Abusers who would typically remain in jail pending resolution of a case are no longer behind bars. We are seeing an increase in violations of temporary protection orders because of this. Bricks thrown through our clients' apartment windows, brake and transmission lines to our clients' cars are being cut, repeated physical assaults and strangulations. The list goes on. It's such a scary and upsetting time for so many victims, compounded by job loss, lack of childcare due to school closures, and of course, concerns about physical health. All of our clients are living in poverty, and approximately 80% of our clients are Black or African American. The majority of our clients come from the most underserved wards in the District of Columbia. These communities have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. They're experiencing compounding trauma as our country navigates the new attention to the longstanding issues of systemic racism and racial inequities. We also know that communities of color experience domestic violence at rates much higher than other communities. It's an incredibly scary and upsetting time for our clients. We are so grateful to the DC Bar Foundation for your support and your partnership. Victims need us now more than ever before. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen and Sarah, for those moving and powerful remarks. We admire the critically important work that you do and proud to be able to support you. And we're especially grateful for your leadership in serving our community during this pandemic. It's now my honor to introduce my fellow board member, Kelly Darnell, who also serves as the Foundation's treasurer and chair of our finance committee. In her day job, Kelly is the Chief Operating Officer at the Bipartisan Policy Center. Kelly will be recognizing the many donors who make the Foundation's work possible and to whom we're tremendously grateful. Kelly?
Good evening. My name is Kelly Darnell, and I serve as treasurer for the DC Bar Foundation. I'd like to thank our generous donors who make the Foundation's work possible. We ended our fiscal year on September 30th with a 6% increase in private fundraising from the previous year, or a total of nearly $778,000. And that is a remarkable tribute to the generosity of our donors, especially during this pandemic, when financial support has never been so important. First, I'd like to thank our 77 society members whose names you'll see on the screen, listed by the year they joined the society. These generous donors provide almost 90% of the individual giving dollars the Foundation receives each year. Named for the year the Foundation was established, members of the 77 Society commit to at least $1,000 each year to support the Foundation's work. This year, we added several giving tiers to the 77 Society to recognize those giving at the $2,500, $5,000, and $10,000 levels. We currently have 65 members of the 77 Society and would love to add more in the coming year. Second, we'd like to thank our corporate donors, firms and corporations, who support our premier campaign call to action. On the screen, you'll see lists of donors who've given at the Friends, Benefactors, Supporters, Bronze, Silver, and Gold levels. A special thanks to the Platinum level firms who are giving at the $25,000 and above level. Those firms are Aiken Gump, Austin & Bird, Boyce Schiller, Sidley Austin, Skadden Arps, and Wilmer Hill. Third, we'd like to thank our Triple Crown firms, those firms that supported all three of the Bar Foundation's campaigns this past year: Call to Action, Go Casual for Justice, and Avenues to Justice. Those firms are Austin & Bird, Errant Fox, Evershett Sutherland, and Wilmer Hale. And finally, I want to extend a big thank you to the dozens of volunteers who helped make each of these campaigns a success. We could not have done it without you. And now, we'll hear from James Sandman, President Emeritus of Legal Services Corporation and a member of our 77 Society, about why it's so important to support the DC Bar Foundation. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jim Sandman. Thank you for supporting and empowering the work of the DC Bar Foundation, the largest funder of civil legal aid in the District of Columbia. Investing in the DC Bar Foundation is both important and smart, never more so than now, for three reasons. First is the magnitude of the need. The Access to Justice Commission laid out the devastating details in the report it issued last December entitled Delivering Justice. 88% of tenants in eviction cases in landlord-tenant court don't have a lawyer. 88% of plaintiffs in domestic violence cases don't have a lawyer. More than 80% of both plaintiffs and respondents in family court cases don't have a lawyer. These numbers don't begin to tell the entirety of the story. These are matters that involve the most basic of human needs: the roof over your head, shelter, protection against wrongful evictions and foreclosures, personal safety, protection against violence and abuse, family stability, child custody and child support, guardianships and adoptions, and economic subsistence, being able to access the support necessary to put food on the table, to clothe your family, to make sure they have access to health care. These needs have always been great, but they're even greater now because of a pandemic that has had a disproportionate effect on our communities of color. I believe that the economic circumstances we're in now and the consequences of the pandemic have made the situation described in the Access to Justice Commission's report last December only more urgent, and the DC Bar Foundation is right in the front of doing something about it. The second reason it's important to support the DC Bar Foundation, and SMART, is its wise stewardship of the funds it oversees. This is not a grant maker that just shovels money out the door. The Bar Foundation does a terrific job of aligning resources with need, of partnering with grantees, of engaging in helpful and constructive oversight, and evaluating the work it funds, measuring impact and outcomes, and identifying areas for improvement. The third reason it's important and smart to fund the DC Bar Foundation is the role it plays in promoting justice in our community. Justice. The most fundamental and important of American values, what Alexander Hamilton called the first duty of society, what Thomas Jefferson called the most sacred of the duties of government, what James Madison called the end of civil society. The work the Bar Foundation supports addresses not just the corporal needs of our community, it nourishes spirits and feeds souls. It gives people faith that our nation's solemn pledge of justice for all might be alive and real. It gives people hope that they can get a fair shake in our justice system. This has never been more important than now. The inequities in our civil justice system fall disproportionately on people of color. The problems of racial inequity in our justice system affect and infect not just the criminal justice system, but the civil justice system as well. And the DC Bar Foundation is leading the way in doing something about it. Thank you. I thank every person who supports the DC Bar Foundation for your generosity and for the role you play in improving justice in the District of Columbia. I thank the Board of Directors. I thank the Foundation's remarkable staff, led by Kira Jarrett. I'm so happy and proud to be among you and supporting the work of this great organization. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Jim. Now we turn to probably one of my favorite parts of the fall reception, and that is to present our Scout Prize. And this is a prize that goes annually to an attorney within our community who has dedicated their career to helping those in need, and who has done so full time with a certain approach to their work, and who is then recognized by our community for that. And so when Jim talks about the work, this is one of the people who does the work. And so we've been fortunate to give this award since 1993. It is a prize that was endowed by the law firm of Zuckert, Scout, and Rosenberger, now KMA Zuckert, and we've been giving it annually since 1993. Many of our past Scout Prize recipients, including the very first one, are members of the Scout Prize Committee that review the nominations that are made each year. And this year, we are just absolutely thrilled that the award is going to Beth Mellon from the Legal Aid Society of DC. And so for those of you who don't know Beth, by the end of this program, I think you will understand why she was selected. And for those who do know her, I know that you are not at all surprised. And so even from the moment that the announcement was first made, the response from within the community has just been tremendous and overwhelmingly positive. And so we're just really excited to present this prize award this evening. But before the formal presentation, the remarks will begin with two of Beth's colleagues and friends from the Legal Aid Society of DC, Eric Angel, who is the executive director and also the 2010 recipient of the Scout Prize, and then Chin Lee, who is the legal director of the Legal Aid Society of DC.
Good evening. I'm Eric Angel, Executive Director of the Legal Aid Society of the District of Columbia.
And I'm Chin Lee, Legal Aid's Legal Director.
So when our colleague Beth Mellon reached out to us jointly asking if one of us would introduce her as this year's Scout Award winner, it actually kind of put us in a bit of a quandary. And actually for me, I was confused. I knew why she reached out to me. I'm a former Scout Award winner. I'm the Executive Director of Legal Aid. And Beth has never actually even said this, but I kind of get the impression I'm a hero of hers and sort of confused why she asked you, Chin.
I'm pretty sure she asked me because she knows that it's always been a fantasy of mine to be one of those bantering MCs at an award ceremony. That or because she just likes me better, Eric, but didn't want to hurt your feelings.
Yeah, hilarious. We do want to spend a few minutes talking about our extraordinary colleague, Beth Mellon, who is really a jack of all trades, a lawyer's lawyer. She's an appellate advocate. She actually listens to Supreme Court arguments on the weekend. She's argued incredibly capably before our DC Court of Appeals. Her dad, I think, argued a case before the Supreme Court, but she's equally comfortable in tenant association meetings, in the halls of the DC Council, in Superior Court, working with our client community. And she's an extraordinary leader of the Joint Eviction Defense Project. Really, I think thousands upon thousands of DC residents have benefited from her tireless advocacy these past years.
We could go on for a while about Beth's professional accomplishments, longer than we have time to do. But I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Beth the colleague, Beth the friend, and Beth the person. I've had the privilege to co-counsel several cases with her over the years, and you couldn't ask for a better partner and teammate to work with, and frankly, sometimes to carry you when times got tough. There was no legal or factual issue that was too big or too small for Beth to chase down. I can sincerely say that she's absolutely among the very best lawyers I've seen in action in my legal career. What's more, she's beloved by her colleagues at Legal Aid. She's beloved by advocates and collaborators outside of Legal Aid. And she's adored, as you can imagine, by her clients. And dare I say, even many of her opposing counsel in the landlord's bar have been won over by Beth's passionate, yet even-tempered and fair-minded advocacy.
So in sum, obviously, as great as Beth is as a lawyer, she's arguably an even better person and colleague. So it's our great pleasure to jointly give this year's Scout Award to Beth Mellon. And now, as a special treat, there are three additional tributes to Beth, one from Judge Julie Becker, another from Joel Cohn, and another from Kirat Johnson. But now over to the judge.
The thing to know about Beth is that she is a brilliant lawyer. And I think that means a couple of different things in this context. First, she is extremely smart about the law, as I'm sure anyone who's worked with her can attest. She has quite a deft way of marshaling the precedent and the case law into whatever legal argument she needs to be making. And she's also got a really good ability to gather the facts and to present those in the most compelling and persuasive way. So that is one skill set. And in the end, I think that's probably a skill set that every lawyer needs to be successful. But Beth has more than that. Beth is also a brilliant legal services attorney, and that requires more than working with the law and the facts. That requires working with clients and explaining ideas and concepts in a way that is understandable to people who don't have legal training and who may have had any number of barriers to participating fully in the legal system. And Beth is incredibly good at that as well. I think if you asked any of Beth's clients or any of Legal Aid's clients over the years, they would tell you how lucky they have been to be represented by Beth during all this time. And I think they'd also tell you that they're as thrilled as I am to see her getting this recognition today because it is so well deserved.
I congratulate Beth for winning the Scout Prize. I've had the pleasure of working with Beth for over a decade. When I think of Beth, I think of the complete public interest attorney, one who strives every day to help individuals who need it the most, one who strives every day to make systemic changes in the law to help the entire community. Beth has certainly made an indelible mark in the policy realm. For example, in 2013 and 2014, Beth played a leading role in drafting the district's air quality law and then shaping the all-important implementing regulations. That law established specific legal standards and gave tenants a far more effective way to address the scourge of indoor mold. Rent control is a perennial and particularly challenging area of the law. Policies always playing catch-up with attorneys on the other side who excel at finding, shall we say, alternative interpretations. Beth's keen, practical insights and her attention to every detail are invaluable assets in those efforts. Beth is skilled, she's passionate, she's persistent. Tenants and advocates and policymakers are truly fortunate to have her by their side. She also happens to be a great person. I congratulate the DC Bar Foundation for this outstanding selection. Congratulations, Beth. It's always a pleasure to work with you, and I'm proud to be your friend.
Hi, my name is Kira Johnson, and Beth is my supervisor at Legal Aid. When I first started working with Beth, I was new to litigation and faced a really steep learning curve. I've grown a lot as an attorney over the past 2 years, and I attribute much of my success to having Beth as my supervisor. Not only is Beth an excellent attorney, but she is also a wonderful teacher. One of the first things she did when she became my supervisor was she set aside time to talk to me about my goals and how she could best support me. She showed me that she was invested in my growth and that she wanted to help me become the best advocate that I could be for my clients. Through Beth, I have found my own voice in this space and have gained confidence in my abilities as a litigator. Beth, I'm so grateful to have learned from you, and I can't think of anyone more deserving of this award and celebration. Thank you for believing in me and for everything that you do to support new attorneys in this space. Congratulations.
Beth, I am honored to present to you the 2020 Scout Prize Award. And we are just thrilled that you are receiving this award, and we would like to hear from you now.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Kira, the DC Bar Foundation, and the selection committee for this honor. And to Kira and the entire staff of the DC Bar Foundation, thank you for showing up for low-income families in DC every day and supporting the work of countless lawyers who are doing what we can to right injustice. I have to pause there and acknowledge that I have so many friends and colleagues in this community who are equally or more deserving of this award. Thanks to you for supporting me and collaborating with me. And a few more thanks to Jonathan Smith, Eric Angel, Jennifer Berger, and Julie Becker for taking a chance on me 15 years ago when I applied to be a staff attorney at Legal Aid. I hope you all will agree that it's worked out okay. And to Jonathan, Eric, and Chinlei for your amazing leadership of Legal Aid, where I've found room to become the attorney and advocate that I wanted to be. I only hope I've done the same for all of the attorneys I've supervised. To my dad, Frank, my inspiration, who raised 4 kids on his own while remaining a kick-ass lawyer. Fun fact, my dad and Chin met years ago when they both worked on a school desegregation case in Louisville, Kentucky, where I grew up. As I've told Chin, I may be in my 40s, but I still love making my dad proud. To my siblings, Kathy, Robert, Bob, and Christine, who have always been my rock of support, and to my Aunt Patricia and so many others in my village that raised me. To my children, Sarah and Rebecca, the little human beings that I want to make proud. Through my work, I'm doing my best to teach them that their most important mission in life is to afford equal dignity and respect to all human beings and to make this earth a better place. But maybe most importantly, to my mom, Molly, who's no longer with us. My mom had schizophrenia, and that simple fact changed my life for the better. Because as a child, I saw my mom descend into paranoia and delusions, lose her marriage and custody of her children, lose many jobs, lose her housing, lose her worldly possessions, including my baby books and pictures, and eventually end up selling newspapers on a corner so she could get quarters to call her children. But I also saw my mom recover. She connected to community-based organizations, social workers, case managers, and yes, legal services lawyers. They helped her get SSI and food stamps, move from transitional housing to a rooming house, to getting her own voucher and living independently. As a young adult, I visited my mom in all of those places, as well as numerous psychiatric wards and state hospitals. I saw in real life the incredible impact that a housing voucher can have. My mom died at the age of 65, far too young, but actually a ripe old age for someone who had endured so much. For the last 10 years of her life, she was safe, she was happy, she was not hospitalized, she was stable, and she had loving relationships with her 4 children and her 4 grandchildren. Stable housing made a world of difference for her. And that brings me to my experiences as a legal services attorney. I came to legal aid 15 years ago with all of those experiences as a child, but also as a white person of privilege. And my dad, God bless him, always made sure we knew that, despite any challenges we confronted and he confronted, that we were privileged. And yet, whatever I thought I knew about privilege and racism and other isms when I came to legal aid, I knew nothing. I'm so thankful for my clients, for everything they've taught me during the past 15 years. This is a lifelong journey for me and so many of us. Tonight, I could tell you about all of the amazing cases I've worked on. I could tell you about my high points, my low points, my successes, my failures, but that's not what matters to me most about this work. I want to talk about my clients, because my favorite moments always are those I spend with my clients and members of my client community. One of my favorite clients in recent years is the father of 6 kids who lived in terrible conditions in a property owned by slumlord Sanford Capital. He worked full-time and was just trying to make it. I visited his home several times. I met his kids and his partner, and we talked about his dreams and plans for buying a house one day. We eventually went to trial in his case about non-payment of rent and housing code violations. What I will never forget is when I asked him how the conditions in their home had affected him and his family. He talked about how his kids would pick up their backpacks in the morning before going to school and shake them off to get rid of the roaches, so they wouldn't be embarrassed in front of the other kids. Now, we were able to get repairs to his home and a significant rent refund, but that doesn't make it right for him and his family. We, as residents of DC and its surrounding jurisdictions, need to ask ourselves every day, continuously, why we allow this to happen. How can we fix it? Why do we allow families to live this way? Why do we create an economic structure in which a father who works full-time for his family cannot do any better? And we also need to ask the hard questions about why someone like him needs a lawyer to try to approximate justice when he goes to court. I'm also thinking tonight about all of those tenants I've worked with in our struggles for systemic change. I've sat at the table with tenants whose lived experiences speak better than anything I can say. I'm so grateful to be able to partner with them. They're amazing. But to be honest, when I sit in meetings with council members and staff with these tenants, and we discuss things like rent control, all I can think about is this. I know the statistics. I'm a data geek. And those statistics suggest that 5 or 10 years from now, many of those tenants and their families and their communities will no longer be there unless we do something dramatic to change the path we are on. Many of them are lifelong district residents going back generations, and they just can't make it anymore. They're the ones being displaced from the district. That is one of many calls for justice in 2020 that we need to keep trying to answer. And it cannot be just words or ideas. I'm a member of a Unitarian Universalist congregation, and our minister often challenges us with a quote from William Ellery Channing: "May your life preach more loudly than your lips." When I think about the past nearly 8 months living through a global pandemic, I'm in awe of our staff attorneys and non-attorney staff at Legal Aid who are working full-time and then some under terribly trying conditions, and then going off the clock so they can show up at protests, support community-based organizations, help get out the vote. They live their beliefs every day, and it's a privilege to be a part of that community. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth, for those meaningful remarks. And your life certainly preaches very loudly. That's inspiring. And congratulations again on being this year's Scout Prize recipient. And thank you for all the things that you've done and continue to do to earn that prize. It means a tremendous amount to this community. We now want to recognize several members of our board and Young Lawyers Network Leadership Council who recently completed terms of service with the DC Bar Foundation. A mixed blessing in all respects to lose these colleagues, but a very nice thing to be able to recognize all that they've done. There are 3 board members who served on the board from July 2014 through September 2020. Ellen Jakovic is a partner at Kirkland & Ellis in their antitrust practice group. As part of Ellen's board service, she served on the development committee for 4 years, including a year as chair, and she's also served on the governance and IOLTA committees. She's also been a faithful volunteer solicitor for our call to action campaign. Thank you, Ellen, for all you've done and for being such a terrific colleague. Bruce Spiva is the managing partner of the DC office of Perkins Coie and an old friend of mine. We were partners years ago in a different firm. Bruce has served on almost every DC Bar Foundation committee and chaired the IOLTA committee during our last bank summit a couple of years ago. Bruce has also consistently helped with our call to action campaign. Thank you so much, Bruce. Paul Smith is a professor at Georgetown Law School and vice president for litigation and strategy at the Campaign Legal Center. He has his hands full right now. Paul served as the foundation's board president, my predecessor in that role from 2018 to 2020, and played a major role in our strategic planning process that developed our current strategic plan. He's also an old friend who I've known for years and admired for years. He has a robust record of committee service, including serving as the chair for the Development Committee and the Young Lawyers Network Leadership Council Selection Committee. Thanks so much, Paul, for all your contributions. All 3 board members will receive framed prints by local artist Mary Belcher, whose watercolor streetscapes and neighborhood maps of Washington, D.C. are known for their rich color and fine detail. You see an example there. In fact, those are the 2 watercolors that'll be given to our former colleagues. During Ms. Belcher's 22 years as a full-time artist, her clients have included the Nature Conservancy, U.S. Forest Service Visitors Center, Smithsonian Folklife Festival, National Building Museum, White House Historical Association, and many others. Ellen and Bruce will receive Ms. Belcher's watercolor map of DC that you saw and are seeing now. And Paul will receive a watercolor of Ben's Chili Bowl since we gave him the map last year. It does not come with a free half smoke, but you can get that yourself, Paul. We also want to recognize 3 Young Lawyers Network Leadership Council members this evening. Timothy Labuti and Andrew Shaw both joined the Leadership Council in July 2016. They have now, as we fondly say, aged out. No offense, you're still very young in my book. That, of course, does not mean they're no longer young at heart, or indeed, as I just said, that doesn't mean they're not young entirely. And we look forward to continuing to connect with them. Tim works in the budget formulation branch at the Administrative Office of the United States Courts. He served on our grants committee from 2017 to 2019 and is a member of the YLN Leadership Council Selection Committee in 2020. Andrew is a partner at Denton's, where he's a member of the public policy practice focusing primarily on energy, environmental, and U.S.-Canada cross-border issues, and served on our development committee from 2017 to 2018. We're also recognizing this evening Meryl Grenadier, who just completed 2 years as co-chair of the Leadership Council and as liaison to the board. Meryl is an attorney at AARP Foundation Litigation. Her work involves nationwide impact litigation and legal advocacy on behalf of older adults with low incomes. She'll continue on the Young Leadership Council, Network Leadership Council, but this evening, we wanted to take a moment to recognize the significant leadership role she's played these past 2 years. Thanks so much, Meryl. All 3 will receive a crystal business card holder embossed with their name, their years of service, and the DC Bar Foundation's logo, as you see there on the screen. So thanks to all of those colleagues. And I want to thank everybody as we wrap up this evening, all of you for joining us tonight, spending an hour of your evening with us. I want to thank my friends for the happy birthday greetings. I can think of no better way to spend my evening then with a group of people who are dedicated to transforming the civil legal aid network here in the district and making sure that access to justice is as universal as it possibly can be here in our community. Can't think of a better birthday present than to try to make that real. If we were gathering in person, now would be the time that we'd continue to visit over food and drinks, and we can't do that, unfortunately. But I'm really hoping that that'll be possible again next year and on into the future as this pandemic becomes a memory and no longer such a reality in all of our lives. Thank you so much for being here. Can't tell you how much it means. We count on your continuing partnership with us to do what we're trying to do, transform the civil legal aid network for the betterment of our city and all of our residents, to provide support to the organizations you've heard from tonight and other fantastic organizations that do such great work. We need to double and redouble our efforts in that regard for the reasons that you've heard about this evening. So thank you to each and every one of you. Thanks for being part of this. Good evening, and please stay safe.